Hello and welcome to the HumanWare See Things Differently podcast. Each month, join your hosts Rachel Ramos and David Woodbridge as we bring you engaging interviews from guests, interaction from our one-of-a-kind distribution partners, stories that'll take you off the beaten path, current promos, shows where you can find us, and so much more. So stick around. Welcome, everybody, to See Things Differently, episode 10. We've made it into the double digits. I don't know how that happened, but we are here, and I am so excited because this is a very, very special episode. We are changing the format a little bit, and I have with me, of course, David Woodbridge, and our esteemed product manager of all the Braille products, Andrew Flatres, and a couple of guests, Chris Cooke, Scott Erichsen, and Allison Meloy. And we are going to take over the airwaves and talk a lot about Monarch and how these three amazing folks purchased it and what their stories are. And we're just going to have a discussion. And I've been really, really excited to sit down with these guys and hear what they have to say about Monarch. So, friends and neighbors and everyone, welcome. Andrew, I'm passing the mic over to you.
Thanks very much, and this is the first time I've been allowed on the show, so it's a privilege. Welcome everyone. My name's Andrew Flatres. I'm the Braille Product Manager at HumanWare. I've been with HumanWare for over 20-odd years. It's like part of the furniture. Been to many different roles within HumanWare, from technician. Even worked at the old headquarters back in New Zealand when we were formerly known as Pulse Data. So some of you may have known the Pulse Data kind of days. And now, of course, being product manager, looking after all the Braille products. And, of course, speaking of the Braille products, Monarch is certainly one of the elite products that we have launched. And it's great to be here with some of the few people that have purchased the Monarch themselves. And I would very much like to hear some stories about what you've been doing with the Monarch. So I'd like to ask Scott, first of all, like what's been your kind of perception of the Monarch? What have you been using? Is there a typical use case that you always use your Monarch for? What do you reckon, Scott?
Yeah, look, I guess I remember when I first saw the Monarch, you showed it to me, and I had a glass of wine in my hand, and you took it away and said, "No,
the membrane doesn't support that."
And
I had it for my own consumption. That's why.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was CSUN 2023. I first saw it, and right then I knew. In my head, I was like, I want this like now, but I couldn't take it home. So I got one in October of 2024, and I started off, I guess, sort of using it for reading, mainly reading, because it was just back then we didn't have the screen reader support for JAWS and stuff, but just to be able to read multi-line and on display was just game changing for me. And I'm a musician. I'm also I'm not a lawyer yet, but I'm working on it. I did my practical legal training this year, which is essentially what you have to do before you can apply for admission as a solicitor. And obviously you have to read a lot of material, and it was so empowering to turn up to my class. I turned up with the Monarch, and all these people were like, "Oh my God, what is that?" And then when I showed it to them all, they were all really impressed. But we had to work in pairs, and and I worked with someone who literally 30 seconds before we were due to present, he modified something in a document, gave me the document on a memory stick, and I just shoved it in the Monarch and opened it and was able to just read it. And, in the old days you would have kind of said, oh, you have to wait 10 minutes while I emboss it, or you have to read. I mean, look, let's be honest, single line displays are still very important. They still have a huge place, and we can't forget them. But the revolution of being able to read electronic Braille on multi-line display is just huge. And for me, sitting up in front of everyone, presenting with an electronic device, reading, electronic Braille, in multi-line was, it's still to this day just, I still think how lucky we are to be able to do that. I mean, we'll get into graphics, I'm sure, later in the session, but yeah, it was really an eye opener, and I use it to read a bit of music as well. I won't sort of go on with that, but that's sort of my main example. I've used it to read a bit of music, not at the same time. I haven't tried learning a piece from it yet, but that's on the radar. So I'm a piano player as well as attempting to be a lawyer, and I work in the Australian government. So I'm looking forward to when the government eventually allow us to have JAWS with the multi-line support, and then I can use it for work.
Well, let's ask the same question then over to Chris. So, hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks so much.
So, same question really as Scott then. So I'd be interested to hear about your kind of initial thoughts on the Monarch. What are you using?
Sure. So I received the Monarch through the APH RISE project, and those initials are always a bit of a conundrum what the RISE stands for, but basically it's Resources, Inclusion, Something, and Employment. Anyway, it's a great program that provides grants to receive Monarch. And so I'm in a cohort of professionals. I work for an agency that serves people who are blind or visually impaired, adult learners. And I am very excited. I take the Monarch in its special bag every day to work, and I just love it. So one of the things I love about using the Monarch is its ability to show the graphics. And there's a wonderful graphics library, and it has really proved helpful for me. I work with adult learners, and several of them do not have English as their first language, so it's been a really wonderful addition to my workflow with them. So one day I had a gentleman who was working with me. I was determining his knowledge of music notation, and I didn't have an interpreter, and I wasn't sure how to explain what I meant by the various lines on the staff, the note values, the shape of the notes, what exactly he knew about printed notation. So I got the Monarch out, I went to the graphics library, and I showed him the various note values and also the various staff lines, and he immediately recognized them. I could tell that he understood what I was communicating. I was asking for his body of knowledge, and he was just great with that, and he loved feeling the various pictures. But had I not had that example to show him, then I wouldn't be able to get my question across as to his previous knowledge. I've also used it with folks in finding out their understanding of fractions, and that has been really awesome. And so it's really proved so helpful for me with my ESL students. I also, of course, personally just love reading on it. I love reading books in the library, NFB Newsline here in the States, and I also, enjoy reading music on it too. And finally, yesterday I was experimenting with the split Braille view, so I got a chance to see what that looks like to have couple different things on my screen and check out what that has to offer. So I'm very excited about all the possibilities. I know that the tactile graphics excite me exceedingly, and so I'm going to keep playing with those. But I just love what it does for my workflow with my students.
Fantastic. So it sounds like, Chris, that you really use a lot of the onboard applications on the Monarch.
And
you're just now experimenting with the new edition of Braille Terminal, right? With yours, the
right.
split Braille that you was referring to. So yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting, I think, going forward when we look at multi-line Braille now. That split Braille enhancement that was introduced in JAWS, which I think was last year, I think.
Yes.
And of course that was introduced to single line displays, which was basically splitting your display in half. So if you have an 80 cell, then of course you'd have, I think it was something like 39 cells either way, or either side. And now with multi-line, I really think that does open up new possibilities, and I'd be interested to talk a bit more about that, I think, later on. But let's jump on to Allison. Hi, Allison. How are you?
Hi, Andrew. I'm so glad to be here. I am probably the newest member of the Monarch family. I've only had mine for a couple of weeks. I had been hearing about it, obviously, since it came out. I know some folks who have one. I do some podcasting with David, and Rachel and I are old friends from back in California, so I've talked with her a lot about it. And the closer we got to having that terminal support, I knew that I needed this in my workflow for a couple of different reasons. And so I actually was kind of intrepid and bought it before I saw it. I ordered it the day before I had a demo, and luckily I loved the demo that I got, and have had it now, like I said, for a couple of weeks. And the things that I have done so far are, one of the things that has just really given me a lot of joy is being able to read a Braille book for pleasure again. I can't tell you how long it's been since I've done that. And just being able to read, a paragraph or sometimes two before I have to pan, it just makes the experience so very nice. And I've been reading some books off of Bookshare and just really enjoying myself there. I'm a worship leader at my church, so I've been using it for reading lyrics when I lead the congregation, and also for just following along with the service. And I manage vision services for a state agencies, and now I finally have the version of JAWS that will allow me to use terminal mode on my work PC, and I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow taking the Monarch to work and trying that out. I've got it hooked up and working beautifully on my home PC, and have just really started to scratch the surface of what I can do with multi-line and JAWS. And it's so cool to be able to see the layout of the desktop and to see how the various parts of the screen, like the system tray and everything, relate to one another. That to me has been just a huge aha moment. Tactile graphics for me, I'm realizing that I kind of have to go back to school almost in terms of learning and working with tactile graphics, because I have probably not used a tactile graphic since I was 18, and that was over 20 years ago. So I really I think what I would really like to do is try to get some very basic tactile graphics and get a picture of what they are, have something like Be My AI or some other AI tool describe it to me, so that I can get an idea of, okay, this is what I'm looking at on the left side of the display here, and this is what this means. Because I have to admit, I have a dog. I looked at the picture of the dog on the Monarch, and I was like, this doesn't look like a dog to me. Why is this? So I know that I have to kind of regain that literacy, if you will, of tactile graphics, but it's a challenge that I am really looking forward to. And like I said, I only had it for a couple of weeks, but it has just changed my workflow. I lead a lot of meetings. I see this being really revolutionary for being able to go through my bullet points for my meeting notes and stay on track. And it's just, I'm so excited that I was able to secure the funding to be able to get this, and I'm very grateful to my very understanding husband.
Well, fantastic. Well, as a newbie then, Allison, I'd be interested to hear about the initial kind of reactions to reading on the Monarch. This being probably one of your first multi-line devices experience on a refreshable device. I mean, how does it compare to reading it versus Braille paper? Obviously, you've got the membrane, so there's like a small membrane that goes over the dots, and that's something that people have questioned about. I know from previous lists that I've been reading on that there's some people that didn't initially like it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, actually I'll get used to it. So I'd like to hear all of your opinions about when was that moment when he was like, okay, it's not a problem for me, or there was a reaction that this feels different, and how would you compare it to Braille paper?
Because of the membrane, it does feel just a hair different, but I never, even from the very beginning of first touching the demo unit, I never found the membrane to be a barrier, if you will, to my being able to access the Braille. It feels, obviously, because of the membrane, for me, just a tad different from paper Braille, but it very much still feels like Braille. And as you go along and are reading something like a long paragraph of text, the more I had myself do that over the first couple of days that I had this, it never really got in my way. Like I never was like, oh, I wish this membrane wasn't here. In fact, I'm really glad that it's there. It protects all of those amazing dots. So it's never hindered me any way. There wasn't ever a time where it was like, oh, okay, I get it. The membrane isn't an issue, because for me, truly, and I realize that isn't everybody's experience, but for me, it was never a hindrance.
Okay, and then Scott, and what about yourself? Being one of the long users of the Monarch. You had one of the first ones out the door, Scott, right? So interested to hear your thoughts when you initially received it to your experience now.
I never had an issue with the membrane. I kind of think of it like reading thermoform, if any of you guys remember reading thermoform paper back in the day. I don't see an issue with it. I never had any trouble reading it. Obviously, it might have been a bit slower, so now I'm obviously a little faster, but I think that's like anything, practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yes, exactly. And that's some of the feedback that I received when we actually started this project over 5 years ago. There's me with the initial kind of demo kind of pad going around the USA, actually showing Braille readers this kind of technology. And a lot of the feedback that I received was it feels a bit like thermal paper or thermal form kind of sheet. And with the Braille spacing, because the Braille dots are equidistant, right? It's not the same size standard as a single line display, because we're using equidistant dots to not only display Braille but also tactile graphics. There was that initial kind of, thoughts that when you're reading it, it feels a bit bigger. But again, I think after time, people were kind of used to that. It was definitely acceptable. It's closest to that Braille standard as possible, given the fact that we're also showing tactile graphics as well. So again, same question to yourself, Chris. And how did you find the membrane when you first received the Monarch?
Yeah, so I didn't have any problem with the membrane at all. Just didn't bother me a bit. Probably the little bit about the spacing, it didn't bother me, but it occurs to me every once and again, like, oh yeah, the spacing is different just because of the equidistant dots, as you said. But no, the membrane never gave me a moment's worry at all. It was just fine with me. And it does remind me of thermoform paper too. I read a lot of that when I was a kid.
Good. And have any of you had to replace the membrane yet?
No.
No.
Good. Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, obviously we're saying average about 6 months, but I think it's longer than that if you look out the device, of course. I don't think I've replaced mine at all since I had my Monarch, which has been over a year and a half. So it certainly takes a beating to get any damage to that membrane, for sure. Okay, well let's talk about tactile graphics. That's a big subject. I mean, a lot of people, when it comes to tactile graphics, you can access the TJL, which is a library from APH that you're able to download tactile graphics, or you can actually open up graphics from the samples folder. There's a samples folder that's in the Monarch, or just from your USB stick. So interested to hear from you about what tactile graphics you've attempted to open. Obviously, there are times where I think you mentioned there, Allison, that it feels like you're back to school and you're now going from a 3D image to kind of a 2D image, which is different. But what kind of graphics have you been experimenting? So let's ask the question to Chris, first of all.
I really love the tactile graphics, and I started with the simple ones. Like there was a baseball helmet there, and I was visiting with my brother and some friends, and I couldn't figure out that it was pointed. We were looking at a side view. And so the friend took off his hat and brought it over to me and placed it in my hands and said, this is the way it is. Oh yeah, okay. We've got a side view. So it's fun. You can actually rotate the images and turn them side to side and upside down and right side up. And it's really fun. And so I started out with simple things and went on to the more challenging ones. But what I did want to say about things is that I've also asked ChatGPT to create a logo for me, a couple of different logos, and I asked it to do a line drawing, and it did that. And I determined that it got the Braille dots wrong in the logo I asked it to create. And so that was pretty fun.
So that was using the browser? So you used the internet browser Ecosia to do ChatGPT?
No, I actually used my computer because I have the website bookmarked on my computer. So I just saved the image to a USB stick and plugged it in and just asked it to do line drawings. And it's been really fun a couple of minutes later to just feel the logo that I just had it create.
I guess that's a really good way of learning as well, right? I mean, if you kind of ask for a particular object in a line drawing and then try to open that up, you can kind of then understand what you're already trying to look at, I guess, and compare that into the 2D. And that's really important when you're trying to certainly starting to understand tactile graphics. It's definitely a skill to require because you could be feeling anything in it if you don't know the context behind that. It's just guessing, right? So I think it's really important when it comes to tactile graphics, a way of learning, and I think that's a really good method using ChatGPT to learn, like reading tactile graphics. What I've used in the past is I've always just used 4 basic shapes, and perhaps this may be something we need to look at adding as a default graphic. Is we've got 4 different shapes or 5 different shapes: triangle, arrows, squares, circles, and a star, and we separate them in top left, top right, middle, bottom left, and bottom right. So it just gives you a clear understanding with the shapes that you're feeling, the Braille labels, but then also the orientation of the page as well. So how can you navigate to the top left and the top right of your kind of tactile graphic in a way. So it's interesting to experiment how to learn tactile graphics, and I think ChatGPT is a good way. Interesting. Okay, Allison, what about yourself, Allison, with tactile graphics?
Well, the one thing I've really been looking at a lot is the map of the U.S. Because it's something with which I'm familiar living in the U.S. and having gone through geography class and having had tactile maps in the past. It's really just allowed me to take the time and kind of reacquaint myself with the different shapes of the states and how every state is connected, and I was able to find Ohio where I am now. So that's been a good learning tool for me because it's something with which I'm already familiar. So I found that to be very helpful too. And I love your idea, Chris, of line drawings. I'm gonna do that this weekend.
And then Scott, what about yourself? I know you've been using your Monarch for reading Braille a lot and music. What about the tactile graphics side of things?
I had a lot of fun actually with the TGIL because back in January when I talked about the example earlier of having to being able to talk with the Monarch and just being able to read multi-line in front of the group of people. Afterwards, in the break, everyone came up to me and said, "Wow, this is a really fascinating device. What can it do?" And I said, "Oh, it can do text, but it can also do tactile graphics." And then more people came over there. "Oh my God, can we see some graphics?" So I had to think about what picture to look up. So I used the TGIL and looked up, a pretty simple one, the Sydney Opera House, because I thought everyone would be familiar with it. So I looked that up, and then I looked up the Eiffel Tower and a few other things. But for me personally, I've been, I think the categories are great too. You can look for all sorts of things. Like you got all the music values, you got maths for those of us who are math people. I'm not, but you can look at there's just so many options. I too love the idea that you were saying of just having a really basic graphic, and it's simply to say to people, okay, here's how it works. I've noticed some of the graphics. It would be nice if they had labels, and that's essentially just to, I guess, be sure of what you're looking at. Because I know I've opened the old graphic and gone, "Wow, what is this?" It says it's this, but it doesn't look anything like it. But again, that could be 2D graphics, and I think again, I haven't looked at graphics since I was at school either, but it is still a really interesting way of doing it. ChatGPT is fun too. I have used that to create some drawings. It would be really interesting because I know you can put JPG and PDF files in there. It'd be really interesting to. I'm assuming if you give it a photo, it won't. It will do some strange things, but I haven't tried it, so that'd be an interesting thing to try.
There's a couple of things you touched base on there, actually, Scott. I mean, the images that come from TJL, the main purpose of TJL is to provide kind of the foundations of it. That was the initial kind of, I guess, visional objective of TJL from APH, which then allows other people to add their additional context, so labels and maybe add some changes to the tactographic. But then when we now look at having that direct access, that does open up doors to allowing you to download and try to view as many graphics as you want to. But of course, the context is what it still lacks there, I think, from TJL. And that's something I think APH are looking to work on there. They'll be making some improvements, actually, on the TJL. And I think they'll extend that and add more context. But tactile graphics as a whole, we're looking now to AI. There's massive talks about converting images to line graphics, but I think we could go one step further, and this is something that I'm kind of visionary. Is imagine with the touch surface, because we on the Monarch has the ability to read where your fingers are, right, with the touch sensors. But imagine touching in areas on your graphic to get additional context. So I think it was Allison that you mentioned about a dog, right? So, imagine if you was feeling that 2D dog image and maybe you're kind of towards the tail, there's a way that you could maybe double tap or something on there, and it give you a bit more information about where your finger's located, what area are you actually touching.
That would be cool.
And that's really key. So that's something that we're definitely visioning in the future when it comes to tactile graphics. And I think that will happen. I think there's a big piece about AI at the moment when it comes to graphics, and I think it could do, an okay job. I think Chris gave a great use case of learning graphics, turn it into line drawings, but we want to go that one step further because I think it's really important for a user to have more context. And it is possible. I know it's possible. So let's hope, and I'm sure it will happen in the near future to have something like that. I guess any other questions from Rachel and David? Is there any other questions that you would like to ask the audience?
I have one. So has anybody played with the Winged app? Because this is the app that you run on your iPhone or your iPad with your Apple Pencil, which I really like doing. And you can do very quick drawings. So, for example, the first thing I did when I started using Winged app was I wanted to see what my signature looked like. Because I've always imagined it's going to be a lot neater than I thought it was. So, first thing, I drew it up and I thought, the D's not too bad, the J's not too bad for John, but the W, I have never seen a worse W in my life. It was sort of like it was sort of like a sine wave, or it was very weird. It wasn't what I imagined a real W to look like. So that's the first thing I tried. But then I did when I started to lose my vision a long time ago, the last thing I can remember seeing was an elephant for some odd reason, which reminds me of sort of the old, the blind men and the elephant type story. But I also drew an elephant. So I went back to all my childhood drawings and I was able to draw them on the Winged app. So that was actually really fun. So I'm just wondering if anybody's actually played using the Winged app on their iPhone. I'll probably pick on Scott first.
Okay, yeah. So as someone who has had no vision, it was really interesting to play with because, I have an idea. The only drawings I know how to draw are what I've either been taught or remember from looking at graphics. So, but again, I did the signature thing and I didn't realize I need to... It's always the same. It's always the wrong size. But, that's okay. They always say to you, right in this little space here, and it's with your finger. You're like, no, that's not going to happen. But I think, look, I have played with it. I haven't played with it as much as I'd like. You reminded me I'm going to play with it again this weekend. But the Apple Pencil was an interesting way of doing it. And I think that's great. I haven't tried drawing without the Apple Pencil. It'd be kind of nice if you could use your finger as well. I haven't tried that.
Yeah, I mean you can. What I found with your finger is that you can't get as definite
Precise.
angles and that. So, precise angles. So, and because I've got lots and lots of different Apple products here, I've got several iPads and several Apple
slowly
Pencils.
behind you.
For
I'm not
reason.
that far behind you.
No, you're not. I know you're a terrible person. I found more. I could do more accuracy because I wanted to do, some other stuff to do with like F1 racing cars and all that sort of stuff. So that's actually been really good. So let's see, who can I pick on next? Allison, have you played with the Winged app yet?
I have downloaded it. I have not drawn anything with it. I know how I do when I have to sign with my finger on any touch surface. So I think I'm going to invest in an Apple Pencil because I think it will help with my drawing.
might too. Look what you did,
Yeah.
David.
Yeah.
You're all gonna
Well,
buy
I know.
Apple
I've made
Pencils
her
now.
buy. Oh god, Allison does not need any encouragement to buy technology.
Nope.
In fact, she needs.
I need discouragement.
So Chris, by your estimation, I'm assuming you've done you've got into art galleries and done demonstrations of tactile drawing. No, I'm just joking. Have you actually played with the Winged app yet?
I have, and I did get an Apple Pencil, and I haven't done a lot, but I found something frustrating that I believe I wrote to you about on Mastodon, and I said, it thinks I'm done before I'm actually finished, and I lift my finger or my pen, the pencil, and it doesn't keep on going. Like, I'd like to be able to have it remain active, me to be drawing on the screen, doing whatever, and then when I'm done, maybe I double tap something, because I want to signal it, hey, I'm not done yet, buddy. So, that's the thing I found frustrating is that I didn't want to feel the screen too much because I didn't want to add a finger to the pencil, but also I wanted it to wait for me to be finished. So that was my only frustration with it.
Yeah, and look, like everything too, everything changes. I love software because software never changes the way it is. And yes, I did notice that too when everywhere you pause or you have a bit of a think about which way you want to go next or what you want to do next, it does time out on you. And as with HumanWare, as with APH, people love getting feedback from people that actually use the product. So I've given some feedback as well because sometimes you sort of want to ponder your next squiggly line in your masterpiece.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, that's different. How about you, Ms. Rachel? What have you done with your Winged app?
I have used Wingit obviously to draw lines and circles. I've also used it to try and improve my print letters. I tell everybody when I write it looks like a 5-year-old did it because they're angled and they're crooked and my circle with the R is all curved and it looks silly. So I've tried to use it to kind of help me make the letters maybe look a little bit smaller and maybe more precise. I love the instant feedback that it gives me. I can draw. I haven't used an Apple Pencil, so I don't know the differences. I've just used just my finger on the iPhone screen, and it's so cool to be able to look at things in that way. To jump to kind of the other end, we talked about at this beginning, and as we've had such a great discussion, I want to ask, 3 of you, 4 of you, and 5 of you, because Andrew's done some work with Monarch and JAWS, but for those of you who have used it, I guess, what is your favorite part? I have too many favorite parts. I love looking at Excel. So much easier to grasp the concept of, that's where all of my columns are. Or if I put a formula in Excel, it shows up at the bottom of the display and I can see if, there's a reference that I need to change. But I think one of my fast becoming favorite features is the split Braille. I was using it the other day. I was reading a web page in the buffered text view, and then I was taking notes in another document, and I just thought it made so much sense to me now. How sighted folks, and Andrew, please chime in on this. You a lot of people have multiple monitors, and I thought, why would you need 2 screens? Isn't one enough? But it's so you can glance at information and then go back to your main screen and look at things. And so just, I guess, from an overarching perspective, I love how Monarch allows me to relate more to the visual world that we all inhabit, right? And I think that's so important to be able to understand where text is and what it looks like, and then how we can grasp that, kind of like tactile graphics. So I guess I'll start with Allison. Allison, if you've had a chance to play with JAWS, what is your favorite feature?
Well, I have. It is just generally super amazing to be able to just read for me, whether it's an email or a document, to be able to just read it in Braille fluidly without having to push a button every few seconds. But I did get to check out a little bit of Excel now that I've got the ability to use the Monarch at work. I'm really looking forward to diving into that more, because I look at a lot of data both in Excel form and in Word tables. So that is going to really kind of change my workflow for the better. That probably for me is the most exciting. I'm interested in trying split view. I have to admit, I never tried it on single line. I can see the appeal on multi-line though, so I have a feeling that once I try it for a couple of things, that's going to kind of become a go-to for me as well.
Have you using the Monarch with PowerPoint? That's another really, I'm going to say it, powerful feature.
I have not yet, but I can see that. Yeah,
just being able to glance at your full slide and not having to scroll so much, especially if there's pictures and things, you have to kind of scroll through them to get to the text. So if anyone uses PowerPoint, and that's a really fun way to use Monarch and JAWS. Chris, tell us all, what are your thoughts about JAWS and Monarch if you've had a chance to play with it?
I have, and I was so thrilled to download the update that first night. I think it was midnight or something. I was upstairs downloading. I was so excited. I love, like you've all mentioned, I love reading just the multi-lines in a document. I have checked out the spreadsheet. It's really fun to have the little column dividers and the formula at the bottom, as you mentioned, Rachel. And I'm just got introduced to the split Braille yesterday, and so I'm still wrapping my head around, okay, if my cursor's here, then the buffered thing is over here. And anyway, I needed more of a tutorial on that. I feel like some more information would be great. There's a great episode recently on that from APH, but I need more details. So anyway, no, I'm really excited about that, about being able to access 2 parts of the screen at the same time without flipping back and forth with my keyboard, And so, yeah, it's all just great. I'm loving it.
Fantastic. Scott, we have come to you in this lovely roundtable discussion. I know you've played with it. What do you think?
I have. I've played with it for a while, actually. It's really innovative. I mean, split Braille I've been using for a while because I have the luxury, I guess, of having an 80 cell. So to split the cells sort of halfway, you can do it with a 40 as well, 20 and 20. But with the 80, you can do 60 and 20, or you can split it different ways. But the Monarch split view is another level again. It's just amazing. I think what's really unique about the multi-line support for JAWS is the fact that we have specific modes. We have, the crop mode and the wrap mode, I think from memory the name is. Yeah. And I think it's really nice to have those dedicated modes, because you can just, if you want to read text, you can just read the text with no issues at all. And, no blank lines or anything, you just read. And with crop mode, it's just excellent, because you can read like spreadsheets, as you said, Excel, and it's amazing to look at. No one's mentioned the web, and I've used it quite a bit on the web, looking at web pages, and it's really interesting to look at a really big table and to look at how that looks, on the Monarch, and looks correct, I guess you could say, well, hopefully correct, in a multi-line sense. I can't wait to be able to use it for work, but given the slowness of any government in the world. You have to wait, but I can use it at home, and it's wonderful to be able to use the different features. I, like you, Rachel, have used PowerPoint a little bit just to see what it was like. I haven't sort of used it extensively, but I have used it. But Excel and Word are great. Outlook is really interesting as well. Like we said, it's nice to look at your message list of mail and sort of go, okay, so we're there, and particularly to just read the email. And I find as well, and I'm sure all of you would as well, like I find, when I read with the Braille, single line Braille display connected with yours, sometimes I will just, not always, not ignore the display, I guess, but when you're reading, like, for efficiency, sometimes you don't use it every second of your your workflow. You're just like, I'll just read this for speech, and then I'll go back to the display when I need to check proofreading. But with the Monarch, I find that I'm reading a lot more. I'm using the Braille a lot more, which is a great thing for any of us. I mean, hey, we all spent a lot of money on the Monarch, so but. Yeah, I think that's just something about multi-line for me. I'm spending more time with my hands on the Monarch itself rather than flicking between the Monarch and the keyboard and things like that. So I think that's a positive too.
Scott, I've got a question regarding that. Do you find yourself reading quickly or faster?
Yes, I do actually. I think because of the Monarch, I'm a bit of a strange one. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I kind of wish that we could customize the panning buttons. So in other words, have the zoom buttons, I guess because they're easier to reach, have them as an option for the panning. Because obviously your little finger can reach out and go tap, and you can move to the next lot of stuff. Whereas you have to physically move your hand at the moment to get to the... and that's whether you're using the Monarch itself or whether you're using it with a screen reader. But I don't know, I think that would potentially speed up our workflow.
So that's one of your wish list, Scott.
Wish list, yeah. We'll get to that later. But yeah, that is certainly one thing, yeah.
Interested to hear what Allison and Chris would very much like to see next on the Monarch. Have you got a wish list what you would like to have on the Monarch?
I would like to be able to play more games. I'm really looking forward to tackling chess. I haven't played chess in probably 30 years, but I'm looking forward to trying that. But I would like to be able to play more games, maybe even some fantasy games where you have to explore on a map and find different things. Maybe even like I know that there is accessibility. I'm in the process of trying to download a bunch of accessibility mods for the Java version of Minecraft. And the first thing I'm going to do when I get it all working is I'm going to hook up my Monarch and see if it'll show me anything. Because I'd like to be awesome. That would be, because I'd like to be able to just look on the display and say, oh, okay, that's what a tree looks like. If I go over there, I can interact with it and I can get logs and start building things. Just like those kinds of things. I love games, and so anything that would make the more visual aspects of more complex gaming more accessible is just right up my alley.
And I know that on the game side of things, there's more to come. So
Good.
Watch this space on that. And I know that on the chess side of things, there has been talks about potentially making that an online game. So you could end up playing against someone online on the chess side of things. So exciting times on that. Great. Okay, well then, same question to Chris. What's on your wish list? What would you like to see next on the Monarch?
Well, I'm glad that Allison mentioned games, because I was trying to think of what I'm wishing for, because I'm so busy learning what is here. But I want to put a plug in for something that I suggested and got the ball rolling on, was accessible Sudoku boards. And so someone on the multi-line Braille users group list is seeinghands.org. They created 250 accessible Sudoku boards, and those are available in BRF format on their website. And I love playing Sudoku. And so if, the numbers 1 through 9 have to, occur in each row and each column without repeats. And so I suggested, just put 2 hyphens in where you want a blank, and then put a upper cell number with the number sign and the number where the setup is of the puzzle, and then put your own numbers as Nemeth numbers, low, dropped numbers with the number sign. Anyway, it's really fun, and I've played it at lunch, and I've got other people interested in it, and games are great. I think word games would be awesome, crossword puzzles, just any, anagrams, just, anything like that would be really, really fun. So, but just saying, putting it out there that you want something, within 5 minutes, this person had returned this amazing set of Sudoku puzzles. And I'm like, really? How did you do that with a computer program so fast? It's awesome. I love it.
I think someone else has created some kind of baseball game. I've not tried it myself, but there's also a baseball game that's been created. I'll be interested to find how that plays on the Monarch.
One thing that I would like, I guess, is to be able to draw on the Monarch itself. So at the moment with the Winged app, you're going from the iPhone, the iPad to the Monarch. Whereas I'd love to be able to just, as I draw, and I'm sure this will be fixed in the Winged app, but as you draw on the Monarch, I'd love to see the fact that you're actually drawing the line as you're actually dragging your finger around. So that's number one. But number two part of that would be, and I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but a long, long time ago in the beginning of times, like about 25 more years ago, there was a device called the Nomad, which I'm sure Scott probably remembers. And what it was you'd have a tactile diagram, and then you could tap on different parts of the diagram, and then it would pop up a little audio segment, and we could certainly do it hopefully do it in Braille on the Monarch, but that would give you more information about that particular item. So let's say, for example, you were touching a wing of an aircraft and you touched the flaps, then you could double tap on the flap, and that would give you more information about the angle of the flap and how it's adjusted for takeoff and landing and all that sort of cool stuff. So I'd like to see that sort of extra level of information. So it sort of brings the actual diagram more alive.
I remember it was a huge part of my schooling. Yes, it was, and now it's gone. I'd love to see it on the Monarch because, and Andrew kind of alluded to it earlier. He kind of hinted that we could do it. So, get those developers, give them some more money and they'll do it.
Keep them busy. Well, they are certainly busy. They're busy working on the next version, of course, which will be exciting. I think there's some good enhancements coming on the next build or the next version, which will be out very, very soon.
Oh, can I mention one thing I forgot about?
Sure.
The wish list. I know one of my colleagues also has a Monarch as a part of the RISE project, and I believe she was mentioning access to Google Docs and Google stuff, because so many students are kind of required to use the Google platform in the classroom. And so,
have you been having a sneak peek of version 1.4?
That's what I was thinking. What?
Not that I know of, but maybe.
So you could certainly say that that is coming very, very soon.
Awesome. That's great.
I guess my wish list item would be, I'd love to see, and this is kind of far out, we're talking about connecting external accessories, but I'd love to see something like an OCR app come to Monarch. You have an external camera and you connect it and you scan a document or maybe even a food product box, and then, I could read instructions or save them. So OCR I think would be great. Also, if we had a way to get maybe in PDF documents. Right now they're turned into text, but sometimes there's tables, and what if we could keep structured or tagged PDF documents, and then we could see how it's spatially formatted for tables or headings or columns or things like that, because we all, I think, work a lot with PDFs. So I guess OCR and then maybe physical representations of PDF documents would be great.
Hey, Rachel, next time you work in the kitchen, reading your recipe or your box of an OCR program, I want to find out how good that membrane is to stop getting flour into the Monarch. That'll be really cool.
I am washing my hands a million times in the kitchen, so it would be way far away from any cooking, but it'd be great to kind of look at instructions and get everything
really
ready.
Cool, yeah.
I remember a while back, actually, when we first presented the Monarch. Actually, one of my demonstrations was to spill some Coke on the device.
Oh, God.
no.
So
That's why I mentioned wine earlier.
and I still got the same Monarch. I still got the Monarch, and I still got the same membrane. It was really just to prove the protection. Well, obviously, if you go in between the cracks of all the keyboards and stuff, then that could potentially cause damage, right? But it's nevertheless, the membrane there is to serve as protection of those Braille cells, and just spilling accidentally a liquid, whether it's red wine or Coke, you have got that little bit of protection there for you.
We probably should say though, please do not try this demonstration at home. Just
Just thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah, please do not.
no.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining me on this. I guess we're running out of time now, so I'll pass it over to Rachel.
Well, I just want to thank everyone, Andrew and Allison and Chris and Scott. Of course, my trusty host, David. Thank you guys so much for coming on and giving folks kind of an inside look as to why you purchased the Monarch and how you use it both personally and professionally. It's been a ton of fun chatting about what things we want to see, what things are here that we're excited about, and I think it's only going to get better from here as technology just continues to grow and evolve. So thank you guys so much for coming on and having a really great discussion and conversation about Monarch and what it's done for you in your lives. We appreciate you guys so much. And as always, if you as listeners have comments, suggestions, you want to be like Scott and Allison and Chris and come on and chat to us, you're more than welcome. Send us a note to podcast@humanware.com, and we'll be back next month.
See you later.
Hey everybody, it's time for the upcoming shows segment. We will be in quite a few places during the months of October and November. Starting on October 23rd through October 26th, you can find us at the NFB State Convention in Albuquerque, New Mexico. On October 23rd and 24th, you can find us at the South Carolina AER, Association of Education and Rehabilitation Professionals Conference in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. On October 30th through November 2nd, you can find us at the NFB Convention in Westminster, Colorado. On November 14th, we will be at the V-Rate Conference, that is the Vision Rehabilitation Assistive Technology Expo in Phoenix, Arizona. On November 18th and 19th, you can find us at Sight Village, London. And lastly, on November 18th through November 21st, you can find us at the Accessing Higher Ground Conference in Denver, Colorado. If you're at any of those places, please feel free to stop by and say hello. We'd love to catch up with you. If you have comments or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to podcast@humanware.com. That's podcast@humanware.com. Thanks so much for listening to See Things Differently. We'll see you next month.